documents, hundreds and hundreds of pages in length, charging the president's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, with a garden variety of crimes. Now, this is tied to the D.C. case. Of course, he was sentenced in Virginia as well, and 2 cases. It means Manafort could spend the rest of his life in prison. But nothing in Robert Mueller's latest memo alleges conspiracy, at least nothing in the unredacted portion we can see. In a brand new piece, The Atlantic's Franklin Ford describes the loud silence of Mueller's Manafort memo, writing that it is plain to see how, in the course of advocating for his clients, Manafort dealt regularly with reporters and editors, senators and members of Congress, welcomed him into his office. Many people knew who he was and what he was doing for a very long time. The document recommends a sentence for Manafort, but according to Franklin Ford, it indicts the culture and business of Washington.
I have no other clients except for Donald Trump to start with.
What about your past clients?
I don't have any more clients.
Do you have any conflicts, do you think, because of the people you represented in the past?
No, I don't represent them anymore.
Back with our panel now, joined by Emily Tisch Sussman, Senior Advisor to Swing Left and former VP of Campaigning at the Center for American Progress. Emily, let me start with you. I'm assuming you didn't read all 800 pages of this thing. I didn't. I think nobody here at the table did. But broadly speaking here, what's your reaction to the picture it paints of Washington, D.C., this side of Washington, D.C., and Paul Manafort's place in it?
Well, it seems like corruption, self-dealing, and enrichment is actually more of the rule of the culture of the Trump administration, starting with the campaign, rather than the exception. They've seen countless number of officials from cabinet level. I mean, Manafort was the chairman of the campaign. These are not just rumors. They are actually being indicted. They are going to jail. I mean, you have to almost wonder if there are people in the administration who felt like they weren't, still to this day, like if they're not making money, they're not playing it right. Like, it actually feels like this is largely the culture of it. And the American people are actually getting that more and more, even just in the last couple of months. It's not just people in the camps, although that obviously does still exist on either side. But look, in recent polling shows that 56% of Americans believe that the Mueller report has uncovered crimes. Like actual crimes, and that's up 15 points from June when the question was first asked. So actually the majority of Americans have come over to believe there's actual crimes here, which, I mean, that's clear.
There you go.
They are getting sentenced.
So earlier, I'm going to read another line from this piece by Franklin Ford. It's very good. There are a lot of good lines in it, but here's one. When I first started reporting on Paul Manafort 3 years ago, I kept looking for a redeeming flicker of humanity. He talks about how his editor kept pushing him to find this. It has to be there. Reader, he continues, let me tell you, I searched hard to find that sliver of goodness, and it eluded me.
Well, I always wondered why Donald Trump hired Paul Manafort to be his campaign chairman for no money. When you show up and work for free, usually that means that there's more to the story that we need to learn. And I remember being in the opposition research meetings during the campaign when he hired Paul Manafort, and us being like, is he really going to hire this guy who has all of these really seemingly suspicious ties to Russia?
Decades-long history.
Right, and if we recall back to that moment, when he joined the campaign, there was some reporting about his ties to Russia, and when he left the campaign, it was because of reporting about his ties to Russia-linked Ukrainian oligarchs, right? So all of this has been in the public domain, and for some reason, we haven't been able to make that connection between the larger Russia investigation and the fact that Paul Manafort was a bright, shiny object in our faces connected directly to Russia that we didn't ask enough questions about. And so I think it's both on us as citizens and as voters, but also on the media to properly vet these folks, because there's no reason why he should have been the campaign chairman of a presidential campaign without many of these questions being answered, because clearly he was committing crimes for decades. It's not like he just started committing crimes when he joined up with Donald Trump.
And had no clients.
Correct. Correct. And, you know, he's also a really, really, really bad liar. Every single interview we watch now from that moment when he joined the campaign, when he's being asked, the Norah O'Donnell interview, for example, when he, you know, he's stuttering. It was so obvious that there was more to the story. And so now finally we're getting to that.
Ellie, about that, looking at the long history contained in this document, one wonders why wasn't a case, why weren't cases brought sooner? Help us understand that. You're a lawyer. Why would this have been something that the Justice Department would have warned him about? You're not registered properly, take interest in, but not take action on.
Well, I think this is one of his defenses, unfortunately, right? And one of his defenses is that people do this all the time, and they don't get caught for it, and they don't get prosecuted for it. They don't end up in jail for it, right? They get a fine, they get a slap on the wrist,
and that's kind of like an achievement as he sees it.
And he's not wrong, right? Like, I mean, this is the problem with the culture that he has been a part of. He's basically Nick Cage from Lord of War, right? He's had this.
I'll have to revisit that.
It's one of my favorite. Right? He's had an international career of helping prop up dictatorships, right? And if you remember, you don't remember the movie. If you remember the movie,
I remember.
I'll see you guys.
It starts with a very close-up of
the end of that movie, right? Ethan Hawke's all like, "You're going to jail," and Nick Cage's like, "No, I'm not." End of that movie, Nick Cage walks out of jail scot-free because there's so much system behind him, right? That's what Manafort still hopes to do. He's still, in his mind, thinks that he's just going to walk out of jail scot-free one day because the system that he has been propping up all of these years, including Donald Trump, will let him go free, right? That's still one possibility. I think the other possibility is that he's just willing to take all the weight. He's just Weebay now, and he's just going to take all the weight for all of the stuff he's did, and he's never going to implicate Trump. When I read that 25-page memo and not the 775-page attachments, there are so many opportunities for Manafort to have flipped and made himself a good deal, and he has refused to do so. He seems to be willing to take all this weight, or he's hoping for that pardon.
Yeah, I'm going to go more with the pardon. That's where I'm going to put my money.
Which dovetails so interestingly with what we saw in the Times yesterday about these meetings that Michael Cohen has been having, and also Paul Manafort sitting down, Cy Vance rather, looking at Paul Manafort, thinking of charging him here in New York as well. All right, coming up, the Secretary of State's threatening direct action while Russia is accusing the U.S. of sending in a Trojan horse to provoke war. Coming up, how things in Venezuela went from bad to worse, and why a Senate Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee says this could all be a pretext for military intervention, something the president has not ruled out in any of his many plans for how to end the crisis there.
I always have plan B and C and D and E and F. I have great flexibility. I probably have more flexibility than any man that's ever been in this office.
Kamala Harris gets put to the test. Joy Reid gets her candid take on the issues most important to voters. And Casey Hunt hits the road to see how the senator's message fares off the Hill. Kamala Harris at 10 and at 7 today.